This week on the TT show, Sony is preparing to acquire Elden Ring developer FromSoftware. The Game Awards is now recognizing DLCs for Game of the Year. Stalker 2 hitting 120 FPS at 4K. New Half-Life 2 Episode 3 gameplay. Intel's new CPU promise amid AMD domination. And our reviews on some of the latest gaming hardware on the market. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the TT show. My name is Jak Connor. I'm a hardware editor over at Tweaktown, and today I'm joined by my co-host
Kosta Andriadis, hardware editor at Tweaktown.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
We are back, and the show has been restructured.
The show must go on.
The show must go on. It never stops. We did take a slight hiatus. We took a week off to rethink how we want this show to evolve. And on the back half of this, and as you would have heard in the intro, we will be going over some of the products that we've been reviewing. This show has been predominantly a news-based show, and we're definitely not going to lose that aspect because a lot of the news that we do talk about is relevant to the products that we do review. But I suppose we haven't really shined a light on that side of what we do as a job. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about I review gaming monitors. I've got probably more than 50 under my belt at this point, and all different variations of sizes, colors, brands. So we thought, why not? Let's bring in the products. Let's talk about them. So the back half of this episode will be review focused, and
and episodes going forward, they'll essentially be consider them audio or video versions of the written reviews that you can read over at Tweaktown. So definitely. And then I've got like a whole bunch of peripherals and gaming hardware to go through. I cover pretty much, GPUs and anything that can be connected to a PC via USB cable or wireless over USB dongle. Yeah, look, we're going to
have no shortage of products to talk about, that's for sure. But yes, the show will still be keeping its news. So for the listeners that have stuck around with us for this long, you'll still get your news. It probably will be the first half, and then the back half will be more product centered. But with that being said, let's talk about the news. Sony. Oh, now I saw this story late last night. It was like 1:30 when it broke, and I was laying on the couch. And one of the, even though this job does definitely have its perks, and that is for sure, I had to get up. 1:30 on the couch, got up. I'm like, oh God, clocking back in here. But that's just what happens. The news doesn't stop. And what I'm talking about is Sony has officially and legally put in a legally binding offer to purchase the parent company of FromSoftware. Now, for those that don't know, FromSoftware is the developer of critically acclaimed Elden Ring and the Dark Souls franchise.
And they pretty much started the genre, right? So when games come out now, they're described as, it's a Souls-like.
Exactly right.
Challenging games with really timing-based combat, or like with parries, or where item weight, or where you have to be really think about every move and stuff like that, and it's difficult, and if you die, then you're back to square one in terms of saving is limited. When games sort of have all those elements, they're considered Souls-like based on FromSoftware's Dark Souls series.
I would describe them as high stakes games that are very mechanic focused. Like if you're mechanically attuned to the Souls-like combat loop, you're very familiar with the stakes of the combat loop, and if you stumble, then you get punished so hard. There's very unforgiving games, and I think they're for mature gamers. They're definitely aimed at gamers that really do care about the mechanics.
And the games don't hold your hand. So Elden Ring,
no,
being as popular as it is basically it's an open world game that's unlike other open world games. It is similar to Breath of the Wild, not in terms of how it plays, not at all, but just in terms of how different it feels to other open world games, how it feels like its own take on a genre, like it stands alone. You know what I mean? Like the modern Zelda games are just, they're not like Skyrim, they're not like Assassin's Creed, and Elden Ring is not like Zelda, and it's not like those games either. Like it's not really 100% Dark Souls. Like the freedom of it's actually I would say more it puts more trust in the player to just figure things out than
it doesn't dumb down it doesn't assume that the player is stupid. That's like something that I find, like, say that's a common criticism of the Dragon Age Veilguard game. I'm digressing right now, but that is a common criticism of Veilguard, is that the critics have said that the dialogue that the NPCs have feel like they're assuming that the gamer is stupid, and they feel like they're being taught down to.
And that's like a complaint that you find in movies too. Like, when characters just start talking and 80% of what they're saying is filling in plot details.
Yeah, obvious exposition.
Like, oh, so we have to do this and then do that? Yes, we need to do this and then do that. It's like, okay.
All right. I know. But I was looking at this story about Sony. I should get the name of the parent company here for those interested. Kadokawa Corporation. How did I go on that one?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Kadokawa. Yeah. I would say that's what it is.
Nice. I got one.
You did stumble for half a second though.
Foreign names for stuff is definitely like my Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do
Achilles.
it. So Sony has this story was rumored about 24 hours ago. A Reuters story came out that Sony was in talks to buy Kadokawa, and then it was officially confirmed by Kadokawa in a statement that said that a letter of intent has been acquired from Kadokawa from Sony. So that is the legally binding offer. But no final decision has been made at this time. Do you think this is going to go through? And a stem of that question would also be, how do you think this is Sony's sort of, not that FromSoftware is the equivalent of Activision Blizzard in any means, but a response to the acquisition from Microsoft?
Well, I mean, Sony has been buying up companies too, right? So it's not, I mean, Microsoft gets a lot of the headlines because they made massive moves, right? So Activision Blizzard is one of the biggest acquisitions in history, period. Like it's not just gaming.
That's
true.
Then,
they did Bethesda, and Bethesda they were bought a while ago, for just $7 billion or whatever. Like if they were sold today, it'd be a lot more. But, Bethesda is a brand that, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, it's huge. So they're really high profile to the Western gamer specifically. But, Sony they've bought Bungie, who are the developers of Destiny and Halo back in the day. Yeah. They bought like a couple of new studios, the studio that obviously closed down behind Concord. And they've actually bought this other company that Haven, I think it is, or Heaven, is like, it's led by someone who used to run Ubisoft Montreal during the days of the original Assassin's Creed. But that's like a heist multiplayer game that kind of looks like Payday. So that could be like another studio that ends up being, shuttered down. But like, buying the parent company of FromSoftware is probably. I think to gamers it's probably a massive move. I don't know whether or not, I don't think FromSoftware or that the parent company produces revenue anywhere near in the realm of Activision Blizzard.
Oh no.
Or probably maybe even Bethesda, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about the critical and widespread popularity of their games from the hardcore gamer audiences. So they're not really mainstream developers, right? But if you're a hardcore gamer, you play. They're obviously, Elden Ring kind of crossed over, that was like a massive success.
Absolutely. And it pulled up the rest of the franchise in popularity with it.
Yeah. I think this is huge because the implications are that, I mean, it's an assumption, right? It's not a done deal, like in terms of this is what's going to happen. But the assumption is that, okay, Sony buys FromSoftware. FromSoftware becomes a first-party Sony studio developing games exclusively for the PlayStation and PC platform, because Sony is now releasing games on PC.
Mm-hmm.
And moving forward, those games will no longer come to Xbox or the Xbox PC app or Game Pass or whatever the case is. And Sony will have FromSoftware in their stable of studios alongside Naughty Dog, Santa Monica Studio, Guerrilla Games, and to be honest,
Insomniac.
They would fit in perfectly in terms of prestige, right? Because Sony's first party.
It makes perfect sense for them.
It actually makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah. Especially given their pedigree of game. Like all of those studios that you mentioned right there are making predominantly open world RPG games. And you could obviously... Like, God of War isn't
like cinematic
world.
action adventure games.
Yeah. There's single player experiences.
Yep.
Yeah. And FromSoftware is, yes, it is a multiplayer game and you can fight each other, but it is predominantly a single player game. All of the Dark Souls as well. And yeah, look, I think it fits perfectly under the PlayStation umbrella. I think it's gonna go through. I have a feeling, and just looking at Summit, like Katakawa owns approximately 70% of FromSoftware, with Sony already owning just under 15% of the developer.
Yep.
So if Sony acquired Katakawa, it would become the majority shareholder, and then it would be able to control the studio. I don't know if FromSoftware will have that kind of pull to be like a Call of Duty or a Grand Theft Auto.
It doesn't
level
really matter,
where it goes. If we're releasing a game, it's coming to every platform. Or do you think this will be exclusivity timed?
The industry is kind of like in flux in terms of how priorities are changing for every company that isn't Nintendo.
Yeah.
Basically, right? You got Xbox now. It's like its latest marketing campaign of this is an
It's
Xbox.
on everything.
It's got people like a little bit like, oh, what are you doing? Because it's confusing, right? Because Xbox is a PC, it's on this, like, and that's what they're doing, right? Like they kind of were the first to say, oh, we're going to bring our games day and date on PC as well, and people are like, oh, really? And it's like, the reverberation from that was that it just means more people have access to it. Sony then decided that they'll do that, but they'll do it in a staggered way. Like, if you want to play it now, you got to play it on PS5. But if you want to play it, a year from now, you can wait and it'll come to PC eventually, whatever the case is for their massive games. So really, like, this purchase could just be as simple as Elden Ring 2, right?
Yeah.
Elden Ring 2, if it's in development now and it's out in 4 years' time, let's say, however long it takes to develop, a massive, proper sequel, and it's going to be a PS6 launch title or around about launch window, within the first year or whatever, and that's probably what it's targeting. Then, and if they look at this and they obviously, like, a letter of intent means they're confident that it's going to go through.
Yeah, they showed their cards.
Yeah, like they know that, like, okay, this has already been, like, they've already discussed it with the board, like, they don't.
Oh, definitely, yeah. This was
board
approved.
That public. You don't put a letter of intent in until you've made all until it's pretty much like,
And especially since Katakawa made it public, like they confirmed as well.
Yeah, they made it public.
So maybe like you could say that's an indicator that they're preparing investors for this merger.
Yes, yeah, and like, to play devil's advocate as well, like this is like, it's a win-win for Sony, right?
Oh, definitely.
But at the end of the day, what we've seen in the industry recently, with development times ballooning, budgets ballooning, games getting delayed, and now it seems that a game that used to take 2-3 years to make now takes 5-6 years to make.
Yeah,
and the games cost roughly the same that they did, but they takes 5 times as many people to develop and twice as long, or whatever the case is, right? So from Microsoft, we've seen them, get rid of staff, like thousands of people losing their jobs from various studios closed, and Sony as well, right? They've shrunk Bungie. They've like gotten rid of like people from Insomniac and stuff like they did like these big widespread layoffs as well. And so like if From Software then becomes a part of that, then they're going to be included in the if Sony decides, okay, we need to do another round of layoffs of 1,500 people around our gaming division, and look, From Software, you're gonna have to get rid of 70, 80 people or whatever the case is. That's not off the table. So that's that's the risk as well for From Software and their parent company, which is like, sure, they're going to have be part of the PlayStation umbrella and have that security and be a massive corporation like Sony. But, we saw it with Activision Blizzard as well. They've cancelled games. They've, was it like 1,000, or like Microsoft did like that 10,000 cull like a couple of years ago, whatever it was. And a big chunk of that was like from gaming division and stuff like that. So it's not like, consolidation where, mergers and now the, Time Warner and, like when you get like these companies, AOL, Time Warner, communication companies, media companies, Disney, and this like buying up everything. The downside is that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all sunshine and roses and security for the actual creators and the individual teams creating the stuff that makes you appreciate the brand or makes you think that that brand is good. You know what I mean? Like people like PlayStation, but they don't necessarily love like PlayStation or Sony. Like they love the games, or
it's the product,
it's very
it's the
specific
games.
creative things that drive you. Like you're not like a Disney fan. You're a fan of like a specific film.
You don't buy a PlayStation just to have a PlayStation with no games.
Yeah, and the way those corporations are run is very specifically profit driven. And if they're going to cut jobs and you become a part of that big thing, so that's the risk as well. But at the end of the day, the question of whether or not From Software games will be PlayStation exclusive, I think just based on Sony's track record, yes. And I think that they will concede day and date on PC to maximize profits.
Yeah.
Because it's
I
just
agree
so
with
many
that.
millions of gamers on PC, you just cannot ignore that.
Question, and this is a slight sidebar, but with Xbox making we're making Xbox exclusive titles come to every platform. Well, they're definitely going in that direction. As a PC gamer, why would I ever buy an Xbox? I'd buy a PlayStation, right? To get the exclusive titles.
Yes, but Microsoft don't really, at this point, aren't really. I mean, they obviously care, but they're like, well, if you're playing our game on PC and you're subscribed to,
it's all Game Pass,
PC Game Pass, or you bought the game from Steam because they release their games on Steam now, then they're okay with that, and they've publicly come out to say they're okay with it because they've conceded the console war. In terms of the most powerful console that sits under your TV, what console you're going to get. They've conceded that to Sony. But then at the same time, I don't, this isn't another sidebar tangent, but I think the industry has completely changed. I think within 5 years, these companies are going to be in a very weird position, and Microsoft could be on the right path, because if you think about like when I grew up, or even when you grew up, right, like the PlayStation 2 or going back to the Super Nintendo and those sort of stuff like that. That's what kids wanted to game on.
Yeah.
And that's what people grew up gaming on, these platforms that you gamed on. Like now, young people today are growing up with tablets and computers and PCs and laptops, and they've got the Switch and stuff like that. They know gaming, but they don't, traditional console gaming is kind of shifting, is not as important as it once was. And that's why there is just as many consoles now as there were 10, 15 years ago. It's not a growing market.
No, that's true.
So I think that's only going to get worse as time goes on. So Sony needs to, work out how they're going to handle that.
Yeah.
Because I think PlayStation will be the one traditional console that'll be left standing. Let's say if the Xbox was to go away, or
look at the cloud streaming.
Yeah, I think that'll be the one that keeps standing. But at the end of the day, they still need to be on PC. They'll still need to be on the cloud as well. They'll need to like expand because you can't just limit yourself to one
platform,
one market that isn't growing.
Yeah. Let's move, and it's still on the same lane of games here, and also from software. Let's talk the Game Awards.
Yeah.
How do you feel about these rule changes? So, for those that don't know, the Game Awards has officially changed its rules to recognize, and I'll make sure I get the right quote here. Quote, the Game Awards aims to recognize the best creative and technical work each year, irrespective of the format or that content's irrespective of the format of that content's release. Expansion packs, new game seasons, DLCs, remakes, and remasters are eligible in all categories if the jury deems the new creative and technical work to be worthy of a nomination. Factors such as the newness of the content and its price/value should be taken into consideration. So now, Game of the Year from the Game Awards can be awarded to DLCs and, the new Black Ops 6 Battle Pass if enough people like it. What do you think about that?
I think it's kind of I don't agree with it technically. I think they should just have a category for that if that's what you want. It should be a DLC expansion pack category.
I have an idea, and here I'm going out on a limb. Let's make another trophy and then make that DLCs and expansions.
They're still giving awards out to
Why are we doing this?
VR or AR game, which is like there's only like who really even knows what VR games are released every year now, right? Or even takes note. There's so many DLCs and expansions that come out every year for games.
Yeah.
And there's enough remasters and remakes for there to be a best remaster and remake. I think there should be, right? Because we've seen remakes like the Resident Evil stuff come out at a pretty steady clip from Capcom. We've got the Dead Space remake. We've got they've added Final Fantasy Rebirth into the Game of the Year category, and it just feels shoehorned in. Like the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree DLC, yes, one of the best reviewed games of the year. Pieces of gaming content of the year, but it's still an expansion to an existing game. And if you haven't played Elden Ring,
you need Elden Ring.
Yeah, you can't play the expansion without the core game. It's and to be honest, like the expansion category will be good because it would
absolutely
it would put more of a focus on post-launch content, which is where a lot of games do good things, right? Shadow of the Erd Tree is an example of a brilliant RPG, just
Phantom Liberty
building on its strengths. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Why not make an exception for that? Because people were saying that's one of the best. Yeah. That's that game at its absolute best. Even Diablo 4's expansion is the best version of that game now, because it's overhauled so many mechanics and systems. And just by that alone, that should be the category. And then you've got so many remasters and remakes coming out that the sloppy ones should be obviously ignored for nomination because it's like, oh, that's just an upscale or whatever. Like it's just a cash grab. It's just, you've just re-released the same game with minimal updates. And then you got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is a full ground up remake that just looks incredible and is really good. Like it improved on the first part of it. So lumping them all into one category is kind of
into all of the categories.
Yeah, like a Game of the Year becomes, it could be anything. Like
it could literally be anything. And this is what I wrote in the article is I want DLC, I want their own categories for DLCs or expansions because I want DLCs to be compared alongside other DLCs. I don't want them to be compared alongside fully fledged games because they will likely be overshadowed purely based on the amount of content that is available within the DLC. A good DLC, let's take Blood and Wine from The Witcher 3. That is a critically acclaimed DLC, absolutely incredible. 20 to 25 hours worth of campaign content in that game. You could and you got a whole new region to explore. That shouldn't be compared to the Witcher 3's full game, like standard game release.
Or even
or some other RPG game, because it's not fair. I don't think it's fair. I think it should be compared to the DLC of the other game that has been released. I think it's an apples to oranges comparison.
Because an expansion or DLC is a very, very different thing. Like you said, you can't get it without you playing the base game. And I think it's always like back in the day, like you look at like Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, Diablo 1, Diablo 2, all those Blizzard games, or even World of Warcraft, right? Where you got these expansions that come out every year, right? Like even the latest WoW expansion is supposed to be really good. It could have been nominated for that category, right? Because it's like, oh, they've done something now 15 years later or 20 years later. But my point is that like those games all came into their own with their expansions. Like Warcraft 2's expansion with its campaign and new mechanics and quality of life improvements was incredible, right? That's the version that most gamers now remembered. But if that was released now, like it shouldn't be in the same category as a new standalone game. If it's like an expansion to a game from 2 years ago, that already won an award. You know what I mean? Like it just loses some of the
the
it devalues it devalues the creating something original or new.
Yeah, and I would my professional opinion is that DLCs, it will be very difficult for a DLC to win Game of the Year, and I think Shadow of the Erdtree is going to win this year.
I think it feels almost rigged. I'm not going to say rigged, but you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like it's a weird selection of games.
Well, what do we have? Let's rattle off the nominees.
So the Game of the Year nominees. You got Astrobot for PS5 from Team Asobi Studio. It's one of their first party games. It's a platformer like Mario. You've got Balatro from a single developer. It's a roguelike poker game. It's actually brilliant. And it's like a perfect sort of Steam Deck sort of game. And it's an interesting addition, but it's actually kind of cool because it's an indie that kind of blew up. It's one of those games that if you started playing it, I would be like, good luck with you, because every 20 minutes you'd be like, I'll just do a couple of rounds or whatever. You'd be there for like 4 hours just like clicking ding 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 ding. And then so the next game you got Black Myth Wukong from Game Science, which is not unexpected.
No.
It's one of the most talked about and played games of the year. You got Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, which we've discussed. You got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is a sequel remake. It's like it's Final Fantasy VII remake, but part 2 of a 3-part remake of a game. And then you got Metaphor Rifantanzio, which is from the Atlas who make the Persona series. I've never really played it, but it's a very anime-inspired Japanese RPG that people absolutely adore, and that could end up winning, and which might surprise a lot of people. But it's one of those games that the people that like it absolutely adore it and say it's definitely one of the best games they've played. So it is a diverse sort of like mix, because you've got
it's a mixed bag, genres. That's for sure.
You got different genres and you got different budget scales, but then you've also got a remake, a DLC, which is just confusing things, I think.
I agree. I think they should just make new categories for him.
Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is one game that people say got snubbed. Now, Like a Dragon, the Yakuza spin-off game, I haven't played Infinite Wealth because I played the first game, and the first game is absolutely amazing, but the first game took me like 6 months to get through, because it's almost like 5 seasons of a brilliant TV show, right? Like that game doesn't care. Like you will get like 30 minutes of like cinematics just because it's like, you're like, what's going on? Like you're just like watching like a drama play out. Like, it doesn't care about like, like how long, like there's so much in it. Yeah. So like its sequel was apparently just the same. So that's why I haven't played it, because I'm like, oh, this is going to take me another 6 months to get.
Oh, that's funny.
But that's like an RPG and a very, very cool one that people saying got snubbed. And there's different like other like full games, like whether or not, I don't know if I haven't played Dragon Age of Elgard. Maybe, I don't think based on what I've been seeing in terms of the reviews, whether that's Game of the Year material. But if you know what I mean, like that's a brand new game, and it's not
new, yeah.
Whereas like, if you got like a category for DLC, that's right, you could have DLC expansion category, you would have Shadow of the Erdtree there. You would have
Definitely.
the latest WoW expansion. You probably maybe the Diablo's expansion. You could put like you could fill it up easy, or even just like small bits of DLC or whatever it is.
And they'll be competing against other DLC / expansion content, which is what I think is the right way to do a comparison.
But also as well, because you're locked out, like you said, if you don't own Elden Ring, you're not going to play Shadow of the Erdtree, right?
Yeah.
But these are the stats for most bits of DLC or an expansion content. If you have even a big RPG that you love, like Skyrim or whatever it is, Witcher 3, and a year later, the big expansion comes out, right? It's maybe like an extra 20 hours of content, right?
Yeah.
It's not as big as the main game, but it's a meaty experience.
Yeah.
Now, the stats all show that if that expansion retains or managed to retain 25% of the initial audience, right? So the people that bought the game and played through the base game, 25%. It's
by
a
the
massive
expansion.
Success.
Yeah, by the expansion.
That's a big success.
Wow.
Because people move on, right? So like
Definitely.
it's a weird it's a weird inclusion just based on that fact as well. Because an expansion, more people kind of like know about an expansion versus actually playing it, right? Like if you heard about Blood and Wine and oh yeah, I remember, which I love that, but it's like I'll get to it eventually. Like
yeah, I'll never get around to the expansion.
They never get around to the expansion. That's a big thing. So I think for that reason as well, like it should have its own category.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to cost them too much more money to make a new statue to give away. Come on.
No, but also as well, like it adds another category, right? Developers would love it.
Makes the show a bit longer. Maybe that's what they were afraid of. But yeah, so that's our 2 cents on the Game Awards, which is, I should say, it's going to take place on December 12th. I'm pretty sure. Yep. Mm-hmm. So mark your calendars for that.
Like last year, there'll be more new trailers than there are like time spent celebrating the actual games that got released for the year. It's such a weird circus, the Game Awards, because
it is weird.
There's more announcements there than there are like.
Yeah,
there's more of a focus on like here's what was announced at the Game Awards. Like that's the story. And maybe like last year, remember the GTA trailer dropped.
Oh yeah.
A week before or something like that, a few days before.
Yeah.
Game Awards.
Oh wow. I hope we see something GTA related. That'd be crazy.
I think we will. There will be a trailer too.
Ooh.
And I think it will just surprise drop. Like I'm hoping maybe tomorrow.
Oh boys. Okay, so let's move it along to Half-Life now.
Yeah.
What?
Half-Life 2 is celebrating its 20th anniversary. Which for those of us that played Half-Life 2 on PC when it came out back in the day, feel extra old. So, Half-Life 2 is Valve's iconic single-player first-person shooter, groundbreaking game that kind of changed the genre in terms of how people perceived single-player campaigns or first-person shooters in general. It did like iconic things back in the day by having like the gravity gun was like a groundbreaking thing. It was like, it made physics a gameplay mechanic. Destructible objects, but also like, using the gravity gun to move things around or do puzzles. And that eventually led to Portal, which kind of launched with the Half-Life 2 expansions, the episodes. So, it was groundbreaking in its own way. So that's celebrating its 20th anniversary. And with that, Valve has posted a full 2-hour 20th anniversary documentary on YouTube.
That's awesome.
You can watch, and I recommend people watch. It's really, really cool. It goes into all the design of the game. Like, it even goes into like Valve was on the brink of shutting down as they were leading into development of Half-Life 2, which is interesting to hear because now we know what Valve is a very different company, right? Half-Life 2 launched in 2004 and it launched with something called Steam.
Mm-hmm.
And so back then you would buy your PC games on like a DVD-ROM at the store, and that was kind of like the main way people bought games back then. Now we're in a digital landscape because of Steam. But what actually happened was that like when you put the DVD in your PC back then, it would install Steam first and then Steam would install the game based on the key or whatever, and you'd create your Steam account, and it was green. I think it wasn't the color it is now.
I
It was like
remember
that. So
when it was green.
it was like the army green, sort of like the camo green, right? And there was like the only game on there was like that and Half-Life 2 Deathmatch. It was like, what is this? Am I installing an app to load a game, sort of thing? It was confusing for a lot of people, but you know, fast forward 20 years and Valve owns the PC market. So in this documentary, which is brilliant and worth watching, it goes throughout the ups and downs of Half-Life 2's development, but also as well it touches on Half-Life 2 Episode 3, which the unreleased conclusion to the game's story. So Valve released Half-Life Episode 2 alongside Portal and Team Fortress 2. That was probably one of the best. It was called the Orange Box.
Yeah.
It had Half-Life 2, Episode 1, Episode 2, which was Episode 2 was the new thing, which was kind of like an 8-hour, 10-hour brand new campaign. It was brilliant. The best parts of Half-Life 2. And then it also had Portal on there and Team Fortress 2. Like, insane quality. So Half-Life 2 Episode 3 was actually in development, we learn in this documentary, for at least 6 months or 9 months, which back then was a long time. Games usually only took about a couple of years to develop back in the early 2000s. And, you know, a collection of playable levels. And we actually get to see, in the documentary, we get to see concept art and even gameplay. So the action would have taken place in the Arctic on this ship called the Borealis, which has been hinted at previously in the Half-Life lore, and it would have included like an ice gun was one of the cool things it had, where you could create like Silver Surfer, like, you know, bridges to like skate over.
Oh, that's
things.
sick.
But then you could also like create like ice shields, and it would have been like, you know, and it was going to be like, you know, a lot of story. Alex, the character, would have joined Gordon Freeman as like more of a companion, potentially even co-op, I don't know, but like a big companion for the campaign. But it was never released and it was cancelled. So Valve founder Gabe Newell felt that it wasn't compelling or different enough, adding that we could have shipped it and it wouldn't have been that hard to do that. But he felt that it just wasn't groundbreaking, and which is kind of strange, but like the way he explains it was that like it just felt like it wasn't anything more than just a good shooter. He thinks that Half-Life needs to do something technically new. It has to do something new for the genre, like Half-Life.
What Apple used to be as a company.
Yeah, so like for that, and it kind of, that's why we got Half-Life Alyx, the VR thing, was that they decided to do something new, which was like create a first-person shooter that works really well and is super immersive because of VR.
Isn't it still the most technically advanced VR game?
Yes, I think so. Still, yeah.
Yeah,
it's just really good.
I'm not very familiar with VR games in particular, so
yeah.
But I know that one is like very, very good, like renowned as impressive.
Yeah, I think I really enjoy VR, but it's something that I haven't done in like a year, right? But there are VR experiences that I think are worth it. Like, you know, if you have access to it, like I wouldn't spend thousands of dollars just to get that access. But there are like experiences where you're like, I'm glad I played that because it's just nothing like that level of immersion. But that also means that when it comes to Half-Life 3, it's not off the table, right? Obviously, the people that were leading the design and writing on Half-Life 2 have left Valve. They're no longer at the company. But it basically, Gabe Newell is basically saying that whatever happens with Half-Life, unless it's like groundbreaking or some sort of technological advanced thing, that as long as unless it's not doing something that no other game is doing, it won't be a thing. And
Fair enough. Maybe they're just waiting for the right concept then.
Yeah, which is such a high bar that, you know, makes you go, well, I don't know if we're ever going to see it really.
Yeah, what they're talking about is they want the same moment of Half-Life 2, but with Half-Life 3.
That was incredible. Like, so
Yeah.
back then, when people first saw Half-Life 2, they were like, they couldn't believe it was a game, and that was just based on it was doing things that other games hadn't done, right? Like when you actually just saw the tripods walking through the city, like War of the Worlds, the big alien tripod things,
Mm.
and then like using a gravity gun to pick something up, and then fling it at it, and then it bounces off, and you like now we take it for granted that physics like that is kind of like standard in a lot of games now.
Mm.
But that was totally unscripted, right? Like you could do that, and you're like, whoa, because like
Yeah.
back then, Call of Duty was very scripted, right? It was like you walk past this line, and then that building explodes or whatever, or
Yeah,
that
yeah,
vehicle
yeah,
explodes.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was like scripted in terms of like, well, you press this button, and then this is going to happen.
Yeah, the
Because
world didn't feel alive. It felt static.
Yeah. Whereas in Half-Life 2, it's like, well, the AI is doing its thing.
dynamic.
And then you got the gravity gun, and you can, any object you see that isn't nailed down, you can do what you want with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very interesting. Let's tie this into Stalker. Now, I love resolution and I love frame rate. And
So Stalker 2,
DLSS helps me do both of these.
yes,
So.
Stalker 2's out today. And okay, so Stalker is a very beloved PC first-person shooter. It was also kind of like similar in terms of Half-Life, in terms of how it kind of like changed the perception of the genre for PC gamers, because it presented like an open world, the zone, which is the Chornobyl exclusion zone to explore. And it had like weirdness, like the game was super difficult, super hard. It didn't really hold your hand, and you kind of like weirdness was happening, the anomalies, and people that were playing it, like they learned, how to survive in the thing. It was just a different type of shooter, right? It was like, it was more survival than it was run and gun. So anyway, so there's been talks of a sequel for so long that now, a decade plus later, Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is now out today, and the early word is that it is buggy, kind of almost like cyberpunk levels. But that is par for the course with the original Stalker. So the original Stalker was known as a game that was incredibly buggy when it launched in PC back in the day, but people loved it. They said, "Oh, you got to stick with it," and then they fixed it over time. And the developers already come out to release a statement with Stalker 2 to say that the game is going to receive updates and stuff based on feedback. But outside of that, one of the other complaints is that performance isn't incredible.
No, I'm just looking at the stats now. So DLSS, let's talk DLSS off first. So on a 4090 at 1080p, it's only able to pull 85.5 frames, and then at 1440p, 74.
Oh well, that's the GPU is just like at 1080p is
it's doing nothing there.
It's doing nothing. So if the 4070 Super is doing 76.3 FPS and the 4090 is doing 85.5,
but at 4K it's 52. But with DLSS on, that jumps,
which is frame generation and upscaling.
It jumps at 4K from 52.4 to 123.
Yes, so
that's insane.
This game is running on Unreal Engine 5, and we know that Unreal Engine 5 is apparently looks good, but doesn't seem to be run very well. I don't know. I don't know what it is about Unreal Engine. But then also this game obviously sounds like it needs optimization, and
definitely
DLSS is doing the heavy lifting here. If you got a 40 series GPU, you're okay to play the game. If you don't, and they the game recommends, I think a 3070 or something like that, or 3070 Ti or something like that, is part of the recommended spec. So like, this is a PC game that
this looks like it's heavily leaning on DLSS. Like there hasn't been much optimization for native here.
This is with max settings. This is with max settings too, so you could probably turn things down to improve performance. But if you've got a 4090 or 4080 Super and you've been hanging to play Stalker 2 for years, you're going to be running this with max settings. And it's all over the place, right? So NVIDIA's benchmarks are accurate, and their video trailer actually shows how wildly it goes all over the place. So the average would be 120.
Right.
But in looking at other people's performance, even on the 4090, yes, it's like 120. But there are sections where even with DLSS 3, it drops below 60.
What?
Uh-huh.
How can
Which
it?
is,
Wow.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay. What's the 1% lows?
NVIDIA don't supply that in their benchmarks,
Damn.
which is probably why it's... well, they don't supply it in their benchmarks, so it's not like it's being hidden, but...
They would want to be hiding it here.
You would see that it's all over the place. But
Yeah.
DLSS is doing the heavy lifting. And to be honest, I mean, like I said, so the original Stalker, when it came out, it was buggy and had performance issues back then. And it took a while to it get to the state where it was, a pretty smooth experience for everyone. It just took a while to get there. And I think this one will be a similar case. And there are reviews that absolutely love the game because of how, for the very same reasons that the first one was well received, which was it doesn't hold your hand. It's extremely difficult. It's kind of like a Dark Souls in that respect, right? Extremely difficult. Like almost to the point where it's hard to see things on purpose because it's like, well, hey, you're exploring a empty warehouse with no light at night in the exclusion zone, so you're not going to be able to see anything.
Oh, this
It's
on
like, okay.
OLED would be crazy then.
Yeah. So like, and people saying like, oh, like it's kind of confusing what you're supposed to do, this and that. And like, yeah, like that sounds like Stalker. But at the same time, it's buggy, right? Where it's like, oh, there's glitches, there's lighting glitches, there's textures warping in and out, there's performance dips. And that's also like the very first Stalker too. So it like, the reviews are ranging from, hey, this game's got a lot of promise and it's a 7 out of 10 now. And, kind of like a cyberpunk situation where it's like at some point, this is going to be a great game.
Yeah.
Well, there's other people saying that it's already a great game because jankiness is a core part of the Stalker series. And it's available now for PC.
It's like RuneScape players. They're like, no, don't remove the jank. That's what we love. And you know what?
The hardcore Stalker players, they sort like they're quoting. It's funny. Like if you go on like the Stalker, like on Reddit and stuff, like the Stalker fans that have been fans for like years, like the quotes from like reviewers, like specifically calling out the jankiness, and then their response is like, awesome. Yeah, Stalker is back, baby.
That's funny.
Because that's exactly how it was back in the day.
They like their combat loop the way they like it. Don't yuck their yum.
Yep.
I think that's about it for the review side of. Oh no, sorry. We haven't done. Do you want to quickly do the AMD story?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so this is specifically hardware CPUs. So first off, Intel has launched its new Core Ultra 200 series, and it's not as... it doesn't seem to be a huge success, right? The gaming performance is worse than the previous generation, but it is more efficient. But it's not that much more efficient where you're blown away by the efficiency, right? And we've discussed the new chips in previous episode, and the flagship Core Ultra 9 285K isn't really that great of a gaming GPU. But in a recent interview, a Intel spokesperson, I believe it is, or
this is never good when you hear that.
Intel VP has basically his actual VP of Intel. So he basically said, I can't go into details, but we've identified a series of issues at the OS and BIOS level, and this is giving me flashbacks of, remember the AMD or the Ryzen recent launch, and this has been a humbling experience for all of us.
Humbling. Getting
to the bottom of what happened, but there is going to be a comprehensive update on the issues that have caused these new CPUs to underperform, and a fix will be arriving in the form of a BIOS or even Windows update or both sometime soon. We might see that probably, if not now, early December, I would say. They kind of like gave that sort of timeline, kind of like by the end of this month or early next month. And what is this fix going to do? Who knows?
It's going to fix the microcode and stop the CPUs from exploding. Yeah,
it's going to be the same issue where CPU reviewers are going to be just like pulling their hair out going, here we go again. I'm going to have to retest everything. You've just you've just launched a a Windows update or BIOS update. Hey, this is going to improve performance by
You
X
just
percent.
made my stomach do a backflip. Like,
Yeah, it's like
I
I'm so
felt
glad that Nvidia's drivers are such solid things that you don't have to.
my heart goes
re-review,
out to all
re-benchmark a
fellow
GPU.
colleagues that are reviewing CPUs.
Mine too.
Your industry is currently on fire, and you guys are suffering through retests between Windows updates and Intel's entire platform being shaky. Your work is cut out for you, and I tip my hat to you, good sirs, and any of you listeners out there. Just know that the reviews and the re-reviews you look at, that's a lot, hours upon hours of work of retesting from those reviewers. So
yeah, I know it's not.
please
It's not a small
read
thing.
them all.
Yeah, it's not a small thing, and like it is disappointing. But this is where we're at now. Like hardware launches are becoming like game launches, where they need to be patched.
Well, if they're from Intel, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it happened with AMD's as well. But
true,
moving on from that, AMD's not immune to that. They obviously had issues with the Zen 5 launch. But their most recent launch, the 9800X 3D chip,
It's
being
smashing.
the best gaming CPU, it's kind of like, it was like a win for them because it was
but it's also firing away. Like it's
selling out
dominating.
everywhere. It's dominating, and other outlets were noticing this as well. But I kind of like always check like Newegg and Amazon and to see what the best selling CPUs and GPUs are, and in the same with like the monthly Steam hardware surveys. Like, I mean, this is our bread and butter, right? Like, I love stats. We love seeing this sort of stuff, and you kind of get a gauge of what's happening. But what was surprising is that recently AMD has kind of like taken over the CPU market. Now, this is only Amazon, right, and only in the US, but this is a good indicator of where the market is in a lot of regions, right? So if you're looking at desktop CPUs, which are CPUs used in PC gaming rigs predominantly, or enthusiast PCs, basically your desktop PCs, the top 10, at the time of when I published this article, the top 10 selling CPUs were all AMD Ryzen chips.
Wow.
And this is from a company that doesn't have majority market share.
Yeah, wow.
So going on top of this, AMD recently posted, I think it was after this article went live, their like a market share update. And like just in the last quarter, they've gained like double-digit market share in the consumer, the Ryzen sort of like desktop CPU space over like from Intel, right? Just on its own. And it's still behind, right? They're like at 30-something% versus Intel's 70%.
No Core Ultra chips are in the top 10.
No, not even like
but
gen,
the
14th
Ryzen
gen.
9800X 3D is number 8.
At the time of it's like at the time of writing this was all like, the X3D was like number 1 because of all the orders and stuff like that.
Yeah, most of these are Zen 3 chips from AMD still. Like we got the 5700X.
Yeah, this is like a snapshot in time.
5600X, which is what I'm rocking still. 5900X, and then we move up to Zen 4 with the 7800X 3D. So 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are Zen 3 and 4. Then we got 7 is Intel's 2700K. 8 is the 9800X 3D, which is the latest Zen 5 offering. And then we move back down to Zen 4 with the 7700X. And then 10 is finally back down to Zen 3 at the 5700X 3D, which there is no Core Ultra. Where does Core Ultra come in?
Yeah, Core Ultra is a flop.
It's not even there.
It's a flop.
It's not.
And to be honest, I think it was like people are thinking that it was kind of almost like a paper launch because they actually haven't. They took like weeks to get to retail. Like they launched and then reviews didn't appear straight away, and then I didn't know what's happening with like their chips. To be honest.
Yeah, because you can't find them. Guess what number it is on Amazon's bestsellers for right now.
Oh, 30.
Higher.
As in lower or higher?
Oh, I mean lower. Sorry, lower.
62.
No. 45. But do you know what is more sold more than the Intel Core Ultra 7 is the 265K is thermal paste.
I can see that now. Corsair's thermal paste.
Yeah, it's Corsair thermal paste. Yeah. That's no
I mean,
good.
like it's a sea of Ryzen now, really, right? And this is almost feels like when it comes, like where Intel still kind of has where they have like the majority, like they've got the majority market shares because I think of the laptop market. To be honest, there's
Yeah.
still like it's still like and what I've heard when it comes to that is that AMD are just not great when it comes to be able to supply laptop chips to people, whereas Intel has got that down pat. Like, you know, companies can release brand new Intel laptops very, very easily, whereas getting access to AMD chips is not as easy, which is why there's very few, you know, where you might see like 15 different Intel variants for this laptop, and then there might only be 2 AMD variants.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that's something that they need to fix because, I mean, if they've cornered the desktop market, I don't see why they couldn't see like massive growth in the laptop market as well.
I think it's a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. I reckon that wraps up about the news section of the podcast. We'll be right back with the latest products that we have reviewed, and we're probably going to start off with some of Kosta's latest audio. So we'll be right back.
All right, SteelSeries has knocked it out of the park with its first gaming earbuds. The Arctis GameBuds deliver detailed audio, deep customization, ANC, and more. Okay, so when it comes to audio headphones, we know that people either use earbuds or they use over-ear headphones, and this is just pure audio stuff. So if you're out traveling, you know, if you're catching the train to work or to school or whatever the case is, if you're at the gym, if you're out for a walk, some people prefer earbuds and some people prefer over-ear headphones, and the split is 50-50 or even more people using earbuds. But when it comes to gaming audio and gaming headsets, it's pretty much all over-ear. So we're used to, if you think of a gaming headset, you're going to think of something that goes over ear and it's got a microphone that either can get disconnected or flipped up to mute, whatever the case is. And the reason for that is that chat is a major component of a gaming headset. Now, gaming earbuds are a thing, but they're not as prevalent as gaming headsets. Now, there are good gaming earbuds, and we've seen various gaming earbuds from different brands. There's Razer has its Hammerhead lineup, Asus has its ROG earbuds, Sony has their own dedicated earbuds for PlayStation 5. The SteelSeries Arctis GameBuds are the very first earbuds from the Danish-based company. Now, SteelSeries for gamers, we know that their Arctis brand, if you've used Arctis brand headset in the past decade or so, you know that they're really good in terms of like the ski band design, the over-ear, the comfort, the sound quality, the ease of use, and stuff like that. They're known for creating some really good gaming headsets. And it's a trusted brand, right? So if you pick up a SteelSeries headset, you're usually going to get something decent at most of the price ranges. So this is their first earbuds, and they are gaming focused. And to be a gaming earbud, you kind of need to do two things. Well, you need to do a couple of things. You need to have some way to integrate chat into them, because chatting and going online playing games, you wouldn't want to have like something called gaming earbuds. You put them on and then you need to connect a microphone as well. It's just going to be kind of silly. And also you need low latency wireless. So Bluetooth has latency, but you know, when you think about connecting headphones to your phone, you use Bluetooth, right? Even with these game buds as well, you connecting them to your phone, you're going to use Bluetooth if you're listening to a podcast or music and stuff like that. But Bluetooth inherently has latency. And even if that's 5, 6, 8 milliseconds, which isn't that long, or 10 milliseconds, it's way too long for gaming, right? Gaming audio changes instantly based on what you're doing on screen, what your character is. You flip the camera around or your perspective around in a shooter or something like that. You're going to hear directional audio. Like, you don't want there to be a lag. And with that, you need to have some sort of low latency, which is what all gaming headsets have, especially wireless ones, which means you need 2.4G wireless, which this has. So it is essentially a game bud or gaming earbuds because it has low latency wireless and Bluetooth and a microphone. And if you're wondering where do you put a microphone on an earbud, essentially you put that. It's like beamforming. Like you can, there are Bluetooth earbuds and stuff like that where it just essentially just creates like a beam that kind of like is pointed directly at the distance of where your mouth would be, and it picks up your chat that way. So and that kind of works. So in terms of the actual specs, so you've got 2.4G low latency wireless, Bluetooth version 5.3, which is the latest version, and they're compatible. And with that, it's compatible with PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, Mac, iPhone, Android, Meta Quest, Steam Deck, and basically every single Bluetooth device. So you're getting versatility. They're in-ear earbuds with neodymium magnetic drivers. Frequency response is pretty standard, 20 to 20 kilohertz, which is standard for most headsets and headphones. And it's got the inbuilt microphone, and it's got active noise cancellation using a 4-mic hybrid system specific to SteelSeries that they implement in their over-ear gaming headsets as well. And surround sound, it supports SteelSeries' Sonar, as well as Tempest 3D audio on PlayStation, or Windows Sonic audio on PC, or DTS or Dolby headphone, whatever you're using. If you've got an app for it, it's obviously supported. And battery life is really good. You've got 10 hours per charge, which is actually higher than most gaming earbuds, and that's over low latency wireless as well. So it's obviously going to be requiring more power. That's with, so that active Bluetooth, but ANC off at 100% volume. So it's pretty good battery life, and you've got 40 hours when you include the case, just like with other earbuds. You put it back into the case, and the case holds 3 additional charges, so it can charge in between use. So total, you've got 40 hours, and then you've got 90 minutes fast charge, which will give you multiple hours of use. The weight is kind of negligible. It's like each earbud weighs 5.3 grams, which is like basically nothing. But in terms of the design, they're actually quite small. So they're not like Apple's earbuds, and they're not like other chunkier game earbuds either. So they're very much in ear, and they're actually quite small, but they actually fit in quite snugly. Actually, really good for that. And the other major difference is that the actual controls are buttons. So on each earbud, you've actually got a little button. So you press it 3 times to switch between low latency wireless and Bluetooth. And, like press once to change the different EQ modes, whatever the case is. Like, all its controls are via, touch, but like tactile touch in terms of like each like earbud actually is like the cover plate where you see the SteelSeries logo is an actual button that you can press, which I think is a really cool change, because I always I've used like Bose in-ear headphones with ANC and stuff like that, and usually like if you're pausing like a podcast, if you're listening to something, you tap it once and it takes half a second for it to actually react, and because you're just touching it, like you don't know whether or not you actually did it. So you go like that, and it's like, oh, nothing's happened. You think, oh wait, there it goes. It's one of those sort of situations where I think the button is actually a smart design choice from SteelSeries. But outside of that, like the big thing is its versatility and being able to use it with portable devices as well. So it's not necessarily that you're just going to be sitting at your PC on your couch with earbuds instead of like an actual headset. You can actually pair it with a Switch or a Steam Deck, and with the USB dongle, have low latency wireless while you're out and about gaming without having to put over ear headphones in. And it's portable, compact, and I think really good for that side of it. So the other big thing, moving on to the software and support side, and this is one area where SteelSeries is kind of ahead of most other companies, is that their software support for their audio is brilliant, right? So on PC, you've got this app called Sonar. And Sonar is one of the only apps that has parametric EQ. What does that mean? It basically means instead of like your 5 or 10 band equalizer for being able to create like audio presets, it is like a dynamic. It's not just like hard points on like a graph. It's you can set like individual tone. Like it is like a professional audio sort of like equalizer as part of its software. And what that means is that they've got hundreds of presets from game developers and from their own audio engineers. So like if you're playing Destiny, right, you select the Destiny preset, which has been tuned by Bungie and SteelSeries audio engineers specific for that game, but then also specifically to take advantage of SteelSeries' audio drivers in their headphones and the earbuds. But their software works on PC, works with every headset. So even if you don't have a SteelSeries headset, it could even be worth installing. So with the Arctis GameBuds, essentially what you use is a smartphone app. Now the smartphone app, the Arctis app, is essentially Sonar basically for your phone. And you've got control over quite a few different things. Like you got settings where you can actually customize or the double press, single press for each ear, like, answer call, end call, change the audio mode, mute, unmute, things like that. You can customize all of those controls. And you can, set the ANC or do all that sort of stuff from the Arctis app on your phone. But then you've got access to every single Sonar EQ preset on your phone. So then it doesn't matter what device you're connected to, you can just control it from your phone. And I think this is something that we're seeing from other companies as well. Logitech has a phone app for audio control, and it's something that we're going to see going forward. A lot of companies either being forced to, or you kind of have to do it, because most people now are pairing their headphones, their wireless headsets with their phones as well, because they have Bluetooth, whether that's to switch between the different modes or to be able to answer calls. But half the time it's just to have access to being able to adjust the audio without having to go to your PC to do all of that. So you don't have to walk over to your PC just to change the preset. You can just do it from your phone, which I think is brilliant. And the Arctis app is a really good app. The downside with how this all works is that the GameBuds only have two modes. Either you're in wireless mode or you're in Bluetooth mode. And it still stays connected to the app, but you cannot get audio from two different sources. So you cannot have audio coming in through Bluetooth as well as audio coming from your game, which is dual audio is a feature that other wireless headsets do have that support wireless and Bluetooth, whereas SteelSeries headsets do not. I'm pretty sure none of them kind of do at the moment. That could be something that they're probably going to be working on, but that is a downside. Now, the big thing, performance. When I was started reviewing it was when Diablo 4's Vessel of Hatred expansion came out, so I pretty much played quite a bit of it with the GameBuds and using Blizzard's own, the Sonar preset that they developed for the game. And I was playing, on Xbox as well as PC, and they actually do a really good job of matching sound clarity in terms of the highs, mids, and lows, and even low-end bass levels, even though they're earbuds and over-ear headphones can be more immersive in terms of adding sort of like spatial awareness or like, rich, warm bass with like where you're hearing sound effects coming from, where you can kind of like tell the distance of where they're coming from and stuff like that. With earbuds, it's more insular, generally the sound. Like it is, you still get like, all the stereo effects and things like that, but earbuds kind of tend to compress the audio where it feels different to like headphones. Like, a lot of people, audiophiles that use earbuds when they're out and about, like if they're listening to music at home, they would have really expensive over-ear headphones with large drivers and a big sort of like ear muffs, because it's just physical space actually leads to like, more physical awareness in the actual audio that you're listening to. That's just, it's just basic physics really at that point. But they sound surprisingly good. I was actually impressed by the audio quality, especially in comparison to gaming headsets as well as other earbuds. The spatial audio, because of the limitations, I just think just because of what earbuds are, isn't quite as good as the Arctis SteelSeries Arctis headsets, the high-end ones. And I think that just comes down to earbuds will never be able to deliver surround sound quite like an over-ear headset will. But I don't think that's a deal breaker. I also tested with Doom Eternal, which I think is a go-to game for me for testing headphones because of the sound design. The sound design and the music is just very intense, but it kind of like waves of it, like, you know, when in between the action you get like that sort of like the distant sound effects and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of detail in that game. And Forza Horizon 5, which I think is a great game for kind of like high-end frequencies and sound effects, but also music as well, because as you're driving, you've got music playing, and that game kind of has really good sound balance for being able to, you know, you should be able to hear the nuance of the music as well as clarity in like your engine sounds and the tire and stuff like that. Like it's really, you know, these are like high profile games where you've got like some of the best sound designers working on. And also tested with various music, a lot of electronic music and things like that. And yeah, I was really impressed with the audio. The other downside is that the ANC, the active noise cancellation, is decent but not amazing. So if you compare it to like a Bose ANC headset that people you know, swear by for travel, like if you're on a plane or something where there's a lot of noise that needs to be cancelled, it's not at that level. It is good, but it's not amazing, right? Like it's not going to cut out all the background audio, but it's going to, you know, it's going to cut out some of it. The downside as well to the way the ANC works here is that it actually impacts the bass or the low end clarity. So if you're listening to music with a lot of bass, or if you're playing a game with a lot of bass and you turn the ANC on, the bass kind of gets neutered a little bit. Like it just feels like it's like it loses something, like maybe like 5%, which is you know, a negative. But I think the trade-off of it being something that you would pair with like a Switch or a Steam Deck or something when you're out on the road, I think is invaluable. But I kind of like earbuds. Like even like when we record the podcast, I use earbuds because I find them more comfortable to wear for a long period versus over-ear headsets, even though I review over-ear headsets every other day. Yeah, so those are the kind of the main downsides. But, you know, there are so many benefits from it. And the little case, you know, there are like little touches, like the little case, which is so portable, can fit in your pocket, whatever the case is, but it actually stores like the USB dongle in there neatly. SteelSeries has decreased the size of their dongle. Their dongles used to be like quite like long and thin. So like if you plug it into a PlayStation or an Xbox, it's not going to block another USB port, which is annoying, right? Like that's actually what's happened previously with some of their dongles, is that you put the dongle in and it blocks one of the other USB ports. And if you do it on your PC as well, it's kind of like, why am I plugging this thing in if like it's going to take up, then it actually takes up 2 USB ports, even though it's only plugged into one. So it's good to see that they've kind of decreased that size. And plus you've got like a little extension cable if you need to not connect it directly to your motherboard or something like that. But I think all in all, you know, the SteelSeries Arctis GameBuds as a first attempt at creating gaming earbuds for SteelSeries is pretty good. Like they've kind of like knocked it out of the park. The sound quality is up there. It's comparable with their Arctis over-ear headsets. You've got rich, detailed sound that's good for gaming, music, streaming media, podcasts, whatever you're going to do with them. The sound quality is great. And then you've got Sonar, the Arctis, and the Arctis Companion app, which basically gives you like unparalleled customization over the audio. So you've got access to so many presets. You can create your own, and it's pretty brilliant. And you know, the bottom line, you know, exceptional audio quality, industry leading customization, and you got ANC, Bluetooth, low latency wireless, and it supports so many, basically every gaming device, every Bluetooth device, and they're great for travel, on the go, or at home. And with that, you know, it's earned the Tweaktown Editor's Choice Award. That's pretty much it. The SteelSeries Arctis GameBuds.
Well, there you have it, folks. that is a full breakdown of SteelSeries' Arctis GameBuds. Did we get a price?
Yeah, actually no, it's $160 US, so $159.99. So which works out to be cheaper than some of the competition, especially the high-end ANC earbuds. So like I think that's one of the reasons why the ANC isn't quite at the level like, you know, the Bose headsets, because like in the Bose in-ear, like the high quality ones, they're like $300 or $200, like an extra $100 US at least.
Both are expensive.
Because you're getting this really good ANC, and that's kind of like what they're designed for, right?
Yeah.
And they're just Bluetooth, whereas SteelSeries has to add low latency wireless and all the other things to make them game specific.
Yep. And all of that knocks off hours of use time as well. Compared to other earbuds that can go for, you know, hours and hours and hours just listening to music.
These are pretty good though. I think 10 hours is actually decent for earbuds.
Yeah.
Because earbuds are different to over-ear headsets, because over-ear headsets last longer because you got more room for battery, right? Higher capacity batteries in there. Earbuds, you know, you're limited by the size and weight, and they actually did a really good because they're so small. They've got a bigger, longer lasting battery than the Sony's in-zone ones, which are larger, physically larger, as well as I think the Razer Hammerhead ones, which are physically larger and have that little. They kind of look like the AirPods, where it has that little stem that hangs down.
Yeah,
which
I'm not a fan of that.
Which I don't particularly like that. Like I actually quite like how compact these are. How they kind of just sit snugly in your ear. I mean, the button thing, which I do like I can get like I've heard some criticisms that where like pressing the button kind of like feels like a little bit awkward because like you're pushing it into your.
That was going to be my question. Was
there
was a button on the. I think I had. Do you remember the earbuds that I had? They're broken now. They were unfortunately put through the wash. But there's the same design, that like kind of boomerang-ish shape, but there was a button on the side that you could press, and you, instead of pushing the earbud into your ear, because the button would be on the outward facing side, you could just squeeze the earbud and then press the button on the side.
Oh, right. Yeah, because these sit so snugly, you couldn't actually do that, right?
Right.
And I think because they sit snug, like just like pressing it, like the button is relatively easy to press, but there is some pressure you need to apply, which does push it in slightly, which can be.
You don't want
some
to have
people
to
find annoying.
readjust
I
it.
didn't really have an issue with it. Like when I was playing switching from Bluetooth back to like wireless, or just like going back and forth, like going from like music on my phone over Bluetooth and then back to the game, then back and forth, and like. And you can have like different presets. Like I didn't mention them when I was talking about it in detail, but like you can have different presets for Bluetooth versus the wireless audio. So you can have like your game, and then you can switch to Bluetooth, and Bluetooth will be set to like the music preset that you like, that you've customized just for like Bluetooth listening. So it's actually it's versatility. I think is something that I always give credit to when it comes to audio devices.
Definitely.
It's not necessarily the be all end all, right? But I think we've gotten to a point where, like, if you've got like a wireless headset or a wireless earbuds, like there's certain things where they kind of need to have a lifestyle component or some sort of like, you know, where like not only does it have to work with PCs and consoles and handhelds and Switch and things like that, but then, you know, the smartphone integration has to feel legit. Like you could actually just be like, oh, I've got my earbuds and I use them for when I'm on my out for a run or a walk or whatever the case is, or at the gym. And then when I get home, I just whack the earbuds in and I just sit on the PlayStation and just go.
Yeah,
I've got my audio.
Yeah, it would save you having to buy another.
And the chat quality, which I glossed over, is just okay, right? There's just gamer headset quality. Right?
Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah,
it's not great. It's not exceptional.
It's possible.
It's just average gaming head chat quality is. You've heard it all, right?
It's what you would expect to hear in a Black Ops 6 lobby.
Yeah, it's just tinny and I mean, there's enough detail there where it works, and you have like EQ that you can do, but there's only so much EQ you can do when the source audio is just not great. So
Yeah.
it's kind of just like, oh yeah, this sounds like. I mean, to be honest, like I don't know, I wasn't expecting anything more from like beamforming earbud.
I don't expect a
Microphone.
lot out of that anyway. Look how big this microphone is versus the microphone inside of an earbud.
Yes.
It's like the capsule inside of this is huge. It's massive. Okay, actually I can just, there you go. It's nude. That we'll move it along now. I want to talk about one of the monitors I just got finished reviewing. Been lucky enough to review the Xenon. Corsair
Xeneon, isn't it? Xeneon.
Xeneon. I'm not sure exactly how it is pronounced, so I'm gonna go ahead and apologize to Corsair ahead of time here, because I'm gonna be calling it the Xenon. No, the Xenon. I don't know. What do you think?
Xeneon. I think it's Xeneon because that's
Xeneon.
Neon. Yeah, Xeneon, which is so hard to say.
Yeah.
Just go Xeneon.
Xeneon.
Go Xeneon.
Xeneon? I reckon it's Xeneon. Don't you think?
Just roll with it then.
All right. Okay. Alrighty here. So OLED gaming monitors are clearly becoming the peak of the PC gaming industry when it comes to monitors that we want to aspire to own. OLED gaming monitors are extremely expensive. They are enthusiast level. They're the cream of the crop. But honestly, once you use one, it is you can't go back from it. It's OLED is, it provides you with the richness of color that you've been wanting in game, that is perfect for gaming. It provides you with an extremely low response times, which is perfect for pretty much any game, but more in particular FPS titles, when those really fast reflexes are very necessary. And also nowadays we are getting up into the higher echelons of refresh rates, and that is going to be the concentration, really, those three aspects of this review of Corsair's Xeneon. And bear with me here, because gaming monitor naming is atrocious. So here we go. This is Corsair's Xeneon 34WQ HD 240-C. So yeah, write that down. You're probably gonna need it. It's rough. We really need to do work, and as someone that does review gaming monitors, the naming here is atrocious across not just Corsair. This is across the board. I really would like to simplify that, and also for anyone that is trying to work out what that means, that name for that, 34 is representative of the size of the monitor. The 240 is representative of the refresh rate as well. So there are a few, it's a bit of a rule of thumb. Most monitors do this as well. So if you see the product name, and you can kind of deduce the size, most of the time the size from the product name. But what does the Xeneon 34W QHD, let's just call it Corsair's ultra wide OLED. We're just going to do that from here on out. Corsair's ultra wide OLED is a 34-inch 240 hertz refresh display with a 0.03 ms gray response time. So we are talking the best of the best. I've been waiting quite a while for ultra wides to hit the 240 hertz mark, and we are finally here. And I can say just straight off the bat, 240 hertz is unnecessarily good. You don't need it. let's be real, there isn't, and especially in ultra wide, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be needing 240 hertz in any competitive title, and you're buying an ultra wide as well. You're probably going to be better off going with a 16:9, probably a 27 inch, and if you're getting really into the nitty gritty, a 24 inch for those first person shooter, high twitch muscle action games. But if you do like ultra wide, and I believe the buy case for this product in particular, and anything that is of the equivalent in this form factor, so any other 34-inch OLED with a 240 hertz refresh rate, is you want it for multi-purpose. This monitor isn't cheap. Well, you're looking at $1,200 for this. This is a lot to spend on a monitor, and for it to just be for gaming, I don't think that is what ultra wide does best. Ultra wide is a very versatile aspect ratio, in my opinion. As someone that flexes between work, word processing activities, and gaming, there is nothing better than an ultra wide for me, really. I can have multiple tabs up across my display. It's pretty much having a 2 monitor setup, but in one display, and that is really good for specific people. Okay, so let's talk about the physical aspects of Corsair's OLED ultra wide. Now, in a market that is a sea of black gaming monitor offerings, this stands out like a sore thumb for all of the right reasons, in my opinion. It is chunky, it is big, it is, and that might be one of the first things that you notice, but it is white. And I have a personal bias towards white gear, and for the reasons that I listed before, is that there is hardly any white gaming stuff, and if it is, it's usually riddled with sloppy gamerish LEDs and all of that other stuff that is, you know, becoming all too much apparent in gaming hardware. But if we take a look at some of these images here, Corsair has done whether you like it or not, they have tried to stand out with this monitor, and I believe it is working. We have a plasticky kind of feel across the entire monitor. It does feel cheap in the hand. This isn't my, it also creaks. There is, I don't want to say cheap, because it does look, and it's not cheap. It feels premium in the hand, like the texture of it, but it just does, it almost feels like the plastic is brittle in a way. So some downsides to that there, and I also think that contributes to the creaking sound as well. Just when you flex the monitor, not that monitors should ever be flexed, but you know, picking it up and getting it set up and stuff like that, I did notice a lot of creaks. So a couple of points off on that side. A few other things here. The design, I did mention it is chunky. It is. The feet and stand for this monitor is shockingly big, and this is, I think, is a major problem for that a lot of brands for gaming monitors overlook. They don't really, in my opinion, consider too heavily the limited desktop space some people have, and when you make a monitor that has a really wide stand and makes the monitor protrude out towards the viewer further, it means that the stand's feet are usually wider, which means they takes up more desktop real estate. Now, the desk that I'm recording this on is 1.2 meters by 90 centimeters. I believe it's representative of a pretty standard average small desk. And I had major problems with the stand of this monitor. I have my sensitivity quite low in the FPS games that I play, because I don't want my mouse to be shaking when I'm making lateral movements, and because my sensitivity is low, my mouse, I'm doing big swipes with my arm, and this is a common thing for competitive gaming. This is not like I'm an anomaly here. but because of the stand's feet having to be so wide, well, not having to be, they just are wide. I've definitely reviewed monitors that are larger than this display and have feet that are closer or more further back from the monitor. Mouse kept colliding with the feet. So I solved that problem by taking off the monitor and using one of my monitor arms. Taking off the stand and using one of my monitor arms, sorry. Which is something I definitely recommend for anyone that picks up this display and has limited desktop space and also prefers their sensitivity low. Let's keep it moving to the back of the display. Connectivity. Corsair has pulled out all of the stops here. We have a large array of USB ports. We will start off with... Okay. Ports. Corsair Xenon OLED ultra wide has 1 times DisplayPort 1.4, 2 times HDMI 2.1 with 48 gigabits per second ports, each are capable of hitting the maximum 240 hertz refresh rate as well. We have a USB-C input with DP alt mode and 65 watts power delivery charging. 4 times USB 3.1, 5 gigabits per second ports, and 1 times USB-C upstream port. I'm not certain who is using every single one of these ports or if it's even necessary. In my personal use case and my workflow, the power delivery is all I really care about. Let's be honest. I have a PC with a complete array of USB ports, and if I ever want to transfer any data, I'm just plugging it straight into my motherboard. I do recognize though that these ports are used by some people. Perhaps I'm the outlier here, but this does seem like a lot of ports to be putting on a gaming monitor. I'm not sure how many gamers are using all of these ports. If this was a panel that was designed for creatives, probably wouldn't be OLED. That's for starters. It would likely be IPS panel for that correct color correction. Then I can agree that these ports are necessary as you would be transferring data to and from your PC, and maybe your PC or your Mac Mini, all of the ports on there are taken up by your peripherals. So having ports on your monitor would make sense then. However, gamers don't typically do that, so not sure why they're there. The only thing connectivity wise that I do think that should be there is a fast charging port, whether it's 65 watts or just like 25 watts is what my iPhone 15 Pro Max charges at. Like if they want to make concessions in terms of the wattage, that's fine. But 65 watts I do think is a great spot for it. We don't need 90 because that's going to charge majority of your tablets quite quickly anyway. So other charging purposes like portable chargers and stuff like that, this is all good stuff to be able to charge out of your monitor if it's available. So points up there. However, I just think it's a lot of ports to be putting on a gaming monitor. Let's move along to the panel. Now this thing is OLED. It is the cream of the crop when it comes to panel offerings. As I said in the intro, QD OLED panels from Samsung and the WOLED or WOLED panels from LG. This is some of the best gaming in-game gaming experience monitors that you can find. The colors are unmatched, the immersion, response rates, refresh rates, all of that is incredible. However, there are downsides, as there is with any product. In particular, this monitor, unfortunately, due to its form factor of 21:9 aspect ratio and 34 inches, it is using the first generation QD OLED technology from Samsung. So that means it has a different subpixel structure than the 3rd generation QD OLED panels. And what is the difference there? on a more specific, when it comes to text, the 3rd generation OLED panels really worked out through changing the shape of the sub-pixel layout. The text fringing problems, which were running rampant for the 1st generation panels. And for those that don't know what text fringing is, it's pretty much just like a halo-ish effect around text, and is especially prevalent in when you're looking at black text on a white background, and when you are spending hours and hours and hours looking at text, it's even more prevalent when you're looking at white text on a black background as well. It creates this like blur effect that can really cause a headache for some people, especially if you're already sensitive to looking at text for long periods of time and clarity with sight, which is obviously why people wear glasses to solve this problem. So the 1st generations weren't good. The 2nd generations from Samsung, they ironed out a few of the problems, but they were still there. The 3rd generation, I believe the problem is completely gone. It is negligible, and is especially at the higher resolution monitors that have a higher pixel density. Now, because this ultra wide is 3440 by 1440 resolution, the pixel density is slightly bigger than a normal 1440p monitor in 16:9, but there is some slight text fringing still. It's still happening, and it's still a pain for me, especially being I'm using this monitor for word processing applications as well as gaming. It's still there. I wrote in my review, if the time spent on this monitor was 70% in games and 30% in text-based activities, I don't believe that this would be a problem for a buyer. Like if you're predominantly using this monitor for gaming and you're just flexing into, you've got a school assignment, or you want to shop Black Friday deals or whatever, web browsing, that's fine. But if you are spending 60% in word-based application or word processing, and the remainder of 40% in games, I would not recommend this. I would probably tell you to get an IPS panel, and yeah, just not, your games won't look as good. But that's what happens. We'll keep it to the panel here. OLED color. If you've seen any OLEDs in any Harvey Norman or JB Hi-Fi, Walmart, wherever you are in any department store, what you're getting is absolutely incredible. So the colors, they're rich. The OLED differentiates itself through being able to turn off each individual pixel, which means we effectively have an infinite contrast ratio. So even colors that aren't inherently rich pop against a black background because there is a complete absence of light, versus a LCD pixel reducing its lightness down to almost a gray to simulate what black would be. So there's a very big difference between OLED and LCD pixel technology, and that is representative in the price difference between these panels, which is extreme. But right now the market is moving in a direction where OLED is becoming more and more. We're starting to see OLED in 34 inches. I have a teaser, a massive super ultra wide OLED display sitting right behind me that's just out of frame. It's becoming more and more. Eventually it will trickle down to a more affordable spot, but right now it is quite expensive. Performance, I suppose this is what everyone wants to know. How are games? Okay, so with all of my gaming monitor reviews, I attempt to find the best games that are enjoyed on the monitor in the spotlight. And for me to do this, I test a suite of games. And I'm talking like I play a couple of hours, most likely more because I get caught up in the game, on the monitor. So I've tested this monitor in Empire of the Ants, which is a fantastic game you should definitely check out. League of Legends, Apex Legends, Overwatch 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Counter-Strike 2, Doom Eternal, Black Myth Wukong, Age of Empires 4, and Age of Mythology Retold. Now, the reason I do this is each of these games are very different from each other. I'm trying to make the connection between what genres best perform on the aspect ratio of the monitor, etc., etc. Factoring in, of course, like other specifications like refresh rate and, of course, response time and resolution. So, with my RTX 4090, Overwatch 2, League, all of these I would consider light competitive titles. They're not very graphically intensive. I was able to smash through with more than, I can't even remember my frame rate, to be honest, but it was exceeding 300 in each easily. So I was able to take full advantage of the 240 hertz refresh rate with probably leaving more on the table than necessary. And look, every single one of those competitive titles, and I've left out like Rocket League, Fortnite, all of this, it's going to be incredible on this display. All of them. There is not one that will miss the mark when you'll be like, oh, I wish it looked a bit different. No. They're all going to look good. All of them. All of the games that I've mentioned actually look incredible. And that is purely for that is the colors, the richness, the blacks when you walk into, say you're playing Doom Eternal and you're shuffling around on a level and then you hit a black room and it's black, like it's very black. League of Legends, all of the Overwatch 2, all of the colors for all the vibrancy of all of the champions' abilities, etc. Age of Mythology and Age of Empires, because you're on an ultra wide, those games look incredible. The top-down RTS style games where you've spread across 34 inches is awesome. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. However, what games should you be playing the most of to buy this monitor? Now, when you're buying this, you're spending $1,200 USD. So if you're playing games that can't even reach the 240 hertz refresh rate, you're leaving a lot of money on the table here. I would be, if your game is capped at, say, 60 FPS for whatever reason, or your PC is unable to hit that 240 hertz refresh rate, I would be steering you towards still an OLED, of course, but 120 hertz. You don't need the 240. Unless your PC is already capable of doing this. I think titles such as the competitive titles that I mentioned, like the League of Legends, Overwatch 2, Fortnite, etc., they are really incredible on this because that's when it really shines. That 240 hertz is perfect. Other titles like your Cyberpunks and stuff like that, that still looks insanely good, but you're not going to hit the smoothness that you are paying for with this monitor. But yeah, overall, the gaming is absolutely incredible. And if I was to identify the gamer and the type of games that they were playing to link perfectly with this monitor, it would be competitive titles to fully take advantage of that 240 hertz refresh rate, as well as the 0.03 milliseconds response time, and extremely well optimized RPGs such as Doom Eternal. That game, like I was pushing near close to 240 on that, like close enough to warrant, if that's your favorite game and you really want to see it on an ultra wide, yeah, buy it. It looks insane. I'll wrap up my final thoughts. Bottom line on this thing, I think it's too expensive. That's it. Bottom line, too expensive. Corsair needs to recorrect their price on this product. It is honestly a gaming experience that is very, very impressive. Ultra wide is one of my favorite aspect ratios outside. It's becoming one of my favorite aspect ratios, especially because games are becoming starting to more natively support that aspect ratio. You don't have that really gross 16 by 9 native rendering and then stretched out to 21 by 9 sloppy development, in my opinion, and also makes me feel violently ill when I shake the camera. So that's no good. So yeah, the bottom line here, I believe Corsair has created a monitor that isn't inherently bad. So that's should be the main takeaway here. It's not a bad monitor. It has problems, as most monitors do. There is no perfect monitor out there. There is a perfect monitor for you, though. But I just think it's too expensive, especially considering that you can pick up an Alienware AW3225QF, which is a 32-inch 4K 240 hertz gaming monitor for the same price. And that won't have any of the text fringing problems that you have. You will have a higher pixel density, so your games will look clearer than what they will on Corsair's display. I believe this monitor should be priced at probably $999. I think that would be competitive. Or if Corsair wanted to get even really competitive on this, $899. That would be fantastic. I just think it's slightly overvalued for what you get here. Performance is incredible. Design, questionable in some spots. Color, love it. IO ports, I don't need them. I don't know who does. Maybe change that one up and reduce the price for the next version. Pixel density, text fringing problems definitely need to be ironed out for the second generation or next iteration of this product. And then once those things are done, this is a very competitive, great monitor that could, I think, be a very versatile purchase for a gamer that is in uni, that, you know, plays games right after he does his work, homework, etc. That's what ultra wides are for. And bottom line here, overall score for Corsair's ultra wide OLED, I'm going to give it a 95 for performance, a 80% in quality, including the design and the build. The general features, 95%, because there is a lot of features here. Value for money, unfortunately, 80%, and that will bring it to an overall Tweetown rating of 88%. Needs to be some work done, but it's not that bad of a product. It just needs to not be that expensive. Maybe pick it up on a deal. All right, thanks. All right,
cool.
Now we can head into the discussion section of the review. Do you have any questions about this product?
Yeah, so it has like USB display over USB-C, right? But that's not a charge port as well.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because sometimes they combine that. Like it's either
no, I think it is.
Obviously,
It's over USB-C. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's like, can you charge your phone on that port? 'Cause that would add to the price.
I can't remember. Yes, no, you can. Yes, you can. I'm just looking at the photos of the back of the. Yeah, there's those there. Can you charge over the back of? Actually, I don't think I tested that. I can test it right now.
Display port over charge. Yeah, because like that can bring the costs up, right? Like if they have if you have like USB-C display port over USB-C on a monitor, it actually costs money to put that on there.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is why, you know, some of the 32-inch OLEDs that are come down in prices, they just taken that off there. So, but like that, I can see is that would have value, and as well as being able to connect any sort of like USB display device to it. But having the hub there being like vertical and like just halfway up the monitor, is it like, I don't know, like I've never used a USB hub, so I agree with you. Like I've never used a USB hub that's been on a display or monitor, and I don't see the need for it. Like if they can bring the, even if that like shaves $50 off the price for removing the USB hub, I would accept it. I'll be like, yeah, get rid of it.
Absolutely. And I just did some live testing there. Both ports do charge. So
okay. That's probably what's adding to the cost.
Oh, definitely. That's what I was trying to illustrate in the review. It's gamers aren't like, yes, we have peripherals, keyboard, mouse, headset, maybe a USB microphone, etc. But most motherboards these days have a lot of ports. Like, I don't think I need like 12 ports on the back of the monitor. And if that means, like you said, that $50 can be shaved off the top, because there is only one USB-C port capable of 65 watts, so be it. 100%.
Yeah.
I like the idea of charging ports on the monitor for my miscellaneous devices on my desk that need charging.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. But to have 4 like upstream and downstream ports, like this is for moving data. And gamers don't do this.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like the hub doesn't make sense to me, but the charging ports do. I reckon it looks really cool. Like based on the images, I think Corsair make really stylish looking gear, and I think if you were actually buying one of their cases, because they make really slick looking cases with the IQ Link fans, and like if you're actually getting like a white PC with like a white Corsair case with all like their IQ Link fans in there, RGB or not, whatever the case is, and you paired it with this display, that would look like one pretty slick piece.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I thought they took big swings here with the design. It is very chunky in person.
Yeah.
I kind of like it for some reason.
I was about to say, I like how, like, in the pictures, like, watching this, like, you'll see, like, the back of it is, like, feels like a separate module, and then you got, like, the display coming off it, and there's kind of like it's almost like a sci-fi,
yeah,
like it's like really like an engineered piece of, like something that's actually been like designed to look kind of like some sort of like high peak, like a different, like a technology that isn't specifically a display, right? It looks kind of like a space station or something at the back.
It does. It looks very cool.
I'm a sucker for aesthetic.
A few criticisms that I didn't include in the full review, and I suppose this is why you should listen to the full podcast part instead of just the YouTube video, is the OSD doesn't have a lot of OLED care features. So MSI, Alienware, even AOC have quite a large selection of OLED care features that are more than pixel refresh. And look, this isn't something that is massive for me personally, but I know it is for people that are really worried about burn-in and stuff like that.
Peace of mind.
A bit of peace of mind, especially when other brands, like the difference between if MSI does have a 34-inch version of this, and I'm sure it's using the same QD OLED panel as what Corsair has. So the difference in performance-wise between those two will pretty much be identical. So the only differentiating factors would be the OLED care options. So that could be a deal breaker for some people that really want to take care of their $12,000 new gaming monitor. If you are worried about OLED and the burn-in problems with it, Corsair has a 3-year warranty for any burn-in problems with this monitor, which is perfectly in line with other brands as well. So yes, there isn't the features in this display as many as I would like. I think there is only pixel refresh from memory, but you do have the 3-year warranty, so you know you take
like my takeaway is like because it doesn't have like the 3rd gen improvements to text, because I've got a 3rd gen display, OLED display, and I've used, I mean, it's the 16:9 32-inch size. So I've used, before that I was predominantly ultra wides. I loved ultra wides for productivity. But I actually had IPS, a really good IPS one, and it's just so much better for. It was so much better for text compared to like OLEDs at the time.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely.
And when like most of my time is productivity on. I mean, I do a lot of gaming, but it's still like I think it's more than 50% where I'm just like opening up Google Docs and
Reading,
just heaps of tabs open and stuff like that. Yeah, heaps of reading.
Mm.
So for me, like I think that might actually be a deal breaker.
Yeah,
like the fact that it's not a third gen panel, and the fact like if all they could get in the third gen panel was 165 hertz or whatever it is at that size, then I would prefer that.
If they did 165 hertz third gen, but drop the price, like because it's 165, they could drop down the price to $999.
Yeah,
this would be an incredible product.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I think
it'd be more versatile as well in terms of like more people would be able to buy it because it would be cheaper and 3440 by 1440 at 165 hertz fully clocked on a new game. That's still heavy. That's going to be heavy. That's like you're going to need a decent like you're going to need probably a 4070 Super or something like that to be able to hit.
And it's curved, right?
It is curved slightly.
Yeah. So what's the
slightly?
Curvature?
Very slightly. I think it's 800. No, sorry. Wait.
Because
let me pull up the.
I mean, you do need a slight curve, I think, when you get to ultra wide, and I appreciate that because like a slight curve is. You wouldn't want it to be flat at the 21:9 aspect ratio.
No, you don't. You want it's ever so slightly. I don't have the curvature on me right now, but I'm.
Yeah, because it doesn't look massive.
It's not. I'm just pull up the spec page. Here we go. Curve.
But other than that, yeah, like I mean, if you're using it just for gaming, like it's a no-brainer because like OLED's been incredible for that for a number of years, and Corsair's this is not their first OLED display, and 1800R curvature.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is like which is like the smallish one. 100 nit peak brightness. 1000.
Yeah. 1000 nits on a single pixel.
G-Sync compatible. Display HDR 400 only. Yeah. So it's got all the good stuff like color accuracy, etc. Yeah. So like I think like the criticisms are still like minor when you look in the how like good it looks and how good gaming on a 34-inch ultra wide is.
Yeah.
Like also as well, like I was going to say like one of the things that I love about it is the actual increased field of view that you get with ultra wide as well. So like if you're playing let's say Marvel Spider-Man, which I think is a good game to play on, like I think because that was like one of the first games that I actually played on an ultra wide OLED was the PC version of Marvel Spider-Man when that came out a year or two ago, whatever it was. And the fact that you could just see more of the city.
Yeah.
And that's like a single player action adventure. Like you just see more of the world. And like you said, with Age of Empires, like strategy games, like you actually see more. Like the UI has more space to breathe, and so you just get to see more.
Yeah, I think that's more immersive.
And that increases the immersion, and I think it's enough to warrant if you're just looking for a straight gaming monitor to choose ultra wide. If you're not playing just one game, one competitive game.
Yeah.
If you like to dip into games like that, like Spider-Man's and God of Wars, and when they come to PC, Black Myth Wukong, and all these like Elden Ring, and all these like big releases that everybody's playing, or like even not every single one, but even every third or fourth one of those, if that's what you play, then it's worth going ultra wide.
I completely agree.
The immersion and the fact that you see more.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it's like a bit of a catch-22 with this one. It sounds like to me, and I think which you articulated, which is that it's still amazing to game on something like this, but there is some shortcomings that are worth highlighting.
Yeah, it's hard to not. You can't. If it's OLED, it's hard to not praise it. Like there is, especially for gaming, it's so hard to be like, oh, it's too expensive. Or it's like, yeah, but look at it. Like it looks so good.
It's so good. Yeah, it's like it's such a it's like you said, you can't go back.
No, you can't go back.
It's like even
you cannot go back.
Like there's no such thing. I mean, for a company, for certain like companies, right? There's no such thing as bad OLED. display, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think that's probably even for most, right? Because I haven't seen OLEDs from every single brand, but you know, when it comes to like Asus or like ROG, right? Like if you picked any ROG,
Yeah, they're all
OLED
coming
that's out
from
at the moment,
Samsung
right?
and LG anyway.
Or Samsung,
Yeah.
yeah. Like all the panels, like even like it doesn't matter. Like it's just gonna be good.
Yeah. Yep. As soon as you got the latest OLED, it's you won't go back. But yeah, that's about wrapped up our review discussion segment of the podcast. We will try and get this a little bit more refined for next week. I hope you enjoyed that section of the pod. Please go check out the clips. We'll be clipping out the review section into standalone clips for your easy digestion. So if you want to go check out Kosta's for any of Kosta or mine's future reviews, they will be standalone YouTube clips, and of course there you will have the full written reviews on tweettown.com. By the time that you'll be seeing it in video form, the reviews should be live. Do you have anything to sign this week's episode off?
No, stay tuned. There's a lot more stuff to go through. I think next week I'll cover rapid trigger keyboards. Go through a few of those rapid fire potentially, or just one. But stay tuned.
Cool.
That's an interesting discussion.
Yep, I'll have a super ultra wide that I'll be talking about as well, which is
49-inch, right?
49-inch.
Super ultra wides. I just spoilers.
Jesus, it's so big. it's intimidating. Like the box.
I think
is
that's
big.
like okay. So when it comes to, before we sign off, like 49-inch OLEDs, right? I know somebody, like, because I remember when they were first announced. Well, I think Samsung was the first one to do it like a few years ago, and I saw it. I was like, whoa, I would love one of those. And then I got a friend who got one. He was in Sydney, so I'm in Melbourne, so like I didn't actually get to see it in person. And he was like saying, "Yeah, it's incredible." And then like a month later, he's like, "I just got to get rid of it."
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Because it's
obnoxious.
It's too big. And sometimes like that aspect ratio is just too much for some games.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay. It's just, and then like half the time he's like, I was just, just playing with borders.
Yeah.
Like,
or you're playing stretched and it feels weird. But yeah, we'll be back with next week with some of my thoughts on that. Thank you very much for listening, guys, and goodbye.